If you like this podcast and would like to make your own, be sure to check out Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello and welcome to the Emperor's New Podcast, the first episode, where I'll be discussing the Emperor's New Grave franchise with a special guest. This episode's special guest is Tara Regan. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Micah. It's so great to be on here. I'm Tara. Known Micah for a good bit now, and I don't even know, like a few years. So
Yeah.
I think we've talked about the Emperor's New Groove and loving Disney movies, and I'm just very excited to be here today. Your first guest is an honor.
Yes, and so you said that I think you've only seen like the last 40 minutes of the movie before now?
Yes. Yeah, typically I tend to catch it like 40-ish minutes until the end.
Which is basically the end of the movie because it's such a short movie.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, because like before we got started, we watched it on Disney Plus and you could see the time lapse.
I think that time lapse said that time length says it's even longer than it actually is.
I bet, yeah, because of the credits.
Yeah,
and things like
because
that.
it's only like an hour and 18 minutes or something.
Oh, okay. So yeah, Disney Plus said
So they added like a couple minutes.
Yeah.
So do you know the history behind this movie?
No, yeah.
It has a really interesting history. It started off as a almost completely different movie. The only similarities was there was an emperor who got turned into a llama by an evil lady, and it was set in Peru. But there was also a Prince and the Pauper-like plot, and
I see it.
The evil lady wanted to block out the sun, and there were mommies and an evil demon. So it was going to be a more serious musical movie, like a traditional Disney Renaissance movie.
Yeah.
Pocahontas had just come out, and it was not doing well. And so the executives didn't feel like what they had was working, so like at the last minute, like they had most of the animation done, they completely reworked it within like a year and a half. Because they had a deadline to rework it.
Wow.
Unfortunately, there was some marketing like Happy Meal toys and stuff, but unfortunately Disney didn't do a great job marketing it because they focused on marketing a film they thought would be more memorable.
Okay, yeah, because I do remember it came out 2000?
Yeah, 2000. Oh, it's going to be 20 in December.
Oh my gosh, wow. Yeah, so when did it come out?
December 15th, 2000.
Okay. For some reason, I remember seeing some trailers for it that summer, and I remember thinking it had come out or something like that.
Yeah.
Or I was waiting for it because I feel like maybe they showed that it was like one of those situations where they kept showing the trailer and like coming soon.
Yeah.
And being kind of curious but unsure of what it would look like.
Yeah.
And at that time I was 10. And Disney.
And I was 6.
You were 6 then?
Yes.
And do you remember when it came out?
I do remember it came out. I did not see it in the theater.
Okay.
I liked it fine, but I was not nearly as crazy about it as I am now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember very well that year because that was the year I found out I had Crohn's disease. That's not really relevant to this discussion.
That's an important year for
yeah.
that bit, I'm sure though. But yeah, it's really interesting to find out that history piece. It does make sense for, I don't know, that Disney, like I feel like it's one of those underrated movies.
Yeah,
sure.
It is. They did because for some reason they had another movie coming out that year that they thought would be more memorable that they wanted to market.
What was that one?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm trying to remember too because
I'm kidding.
Oh,
it's
really?
102 Dalmatians.
Oh, okay.
You
know, that was a bit. Yeah, I guess so. I forgot about that one. I remember following them and really loving. This one also reminds me of Hercules in some way.
It was. Yeah, I feel like there was like a progression from like Aladdin to Hercules to this in terms of the tone of the movies.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. But it's so interesting that they reworked this in that such a short amount of time.
And over the years, it has gotten a much larger following thanks to like the internet and stuff.
Yeah.
and a lot of people like it because it feels less like a traditional Disney movie and more like a Looney Tunes cartoon stretched out into a movie length. Like even some of the character designs, like the squirrel, kind of looks like a Looney Tunes character.
Yeah.
So that's what's really interesting, and it's also, I don't know if this is true, but it feels to me like it may be one of the first Disney movies where, at least from the beginning, the main character isn't like a good person.
Yeah, that's true.
Which feels bold to me for some reason for them to have done that.
Do you know if David Spade had been on it the whole time?
If David Spade was going to work on the movie that it was going to be before, yeah.
Okay.
But Kronk wasn't in the other movie, so objectively, the movie we have now is better than the other movie would have been because it has Kronk.
Yeah, for sure. Would you say Kronk is like one of your favorite, most critical characters in this movie?
Honestly, the entire plot basically happens because of Kronk.
That is so
if you
true.
think about it.
Yeah. And he's so multi-dimensional.
Yeah.
He's like the best evil sidekick ever.
Yeah, because he's not really. I mean, he's not really evil.
He's like a chaotic good.
He's just an extreme doormat. He wants to make everyone happy, but currently the person who's employing him is evil. So
yeah, and just he's one of those guys that he's gotta make a paycheck so he can really fulfill his cooking hobby and interests.
Yeah, and so eventually, after a few years, they made a sequel, which, I mean, they were making a sequel to everything at this time, but so it's not that surprising. With the sequel focused on Kronk, and that's what my next episode will be about whenever I get around to doing it, and finding a guest for it. And they also did a TV series.
I remember that. That was centered on Kronk too.
And the TV series was about Kuzco going to school.
Okay.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I think that's okay because the movie doesn't make a whole lot of sense either.
And I love how self-aware it is.
Yeah, and the TV show is like that too.
Cool.
And so, yeah.
This movie.
I'm gonna look at my notes, so I'll have something else to talk about.
Yeah, well, you gave me a lot of good history there.
So the theme song guy in the opening who seemed to think that was Tom Jones. There's a funny story behind how they got Tom Jones. So the music for this movie, when it was a musical, was written by Sting. After they changed it, they didn't keep many of the songs, but they had him write this song so that there would be at least one or... There's another song that's over the credits, but but it's kind of a boring song compared to the rest of the movie. The opening song all about how great Cusco is, they wanted Sting to sing it, and he said, "No, I'm too old." So they got Tom Jones, who was like 11 years older than him, to sing it.
But it's perfect, though.
Yeah.
Like, I can't think of this movie without him singing.
Yeah.
But it does give me, like, Michael McDonald vibes,
yeah.
That 90s music, like that.
Yeah.
Sultry voice.
And, also, there's a lot of anachronisms in this movie.
Yeah.
Where it's set in, the 1400s, I guess, Peru.
Yeah.
And they have, like, river dancing and roller coasters, which there still isn't a ride based on this movie.
Oh, no.
And there's, 5 different scenes in this movie that could be a single ride. So...
Oh, yeah. If you could think of this movie as a ride at Disney World or Disneyland, what do you think they should have? Should it be a roller coaster or a log float?
I came up with a very complex thing that I kind of like to keep close to myself, but basically, it would definitely have a roller coaster as part of it.
Okay, part of
it. It would also have dark ride bits.
Yeah.
So that you see animatronics and stuff.
That's what I would think about it.
Because there's tiny references to it here or there, but it's not, it's not as referenced as the major, like the Lion King and stuff.
Yeah.
Another note I have on here is that Disney, for some reason, always seemed to want to make bugs look delicious to me.
Yeah.
Because the bugs in this look really yummy, even though Cusco doesn't think so. And I remember, I always thought the bugs in the Lion King looked yummy.
Yes, I was just going to say that trunk of deliciousness was represented with that bowl that Pacha eats.
Yeah, the pill bug.
The pill bug.
Which I guess technically is a crustacean, but...
Yeah, true. this is an exoskeleton.
Yeah.
I wonder how that. It struck me this time watching it. Like, is that actually true to this area? Like, do a lot of people eat bugs?
I don't think so. I think
that so
that was just something silly they came up with.
Okay.
Also, the movie's very short, as I think I said that already.
That would be a true homage to it if we were like, the movie's really short, and then end the podcast right here at 10 minutes. Yes.
Yeah, it would be a short podcast. Do you have any notes that you took?
Yeah, I took a few notes about like character arc and that type of thing. I thought that this movie is like a celebrity tell-all, especially like with the way David Spade just gives voice to Kuzco, and is mostly a narrator at various points, and then you kind of meet up to him at the end where the beginning started, and he's like, "This is my celebrity tell-all. This is like a huge character. Like, he has a huge arc."
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Pacha, I was like, he is like such a small, like maybe the tiniest slope of an arc possible.
Yeah. He kind of mostly just exists to give Kuzco a reason to have his arc.
Exactly, yeah, but then is also still so charismatic and full and rich.
And John Goodman.
And John Goodman, just so good. Which he adds a lot to him too. Yeah, so I think like Kuzco's arc is definitely like the shape of Pacha's family's house's hill. Like, it's so sharp. You see so much from him, but you still see him backtracking at various points where he's trying to. It's so interesting too, because I think of improv a lot when I watch movies.
Yeah.
And you've done a lot of improv too.
Tara teaches improv sometimes.
Yes, I do, and I perform improv a lot every week. Different theaters around the Triangle. And so, yeah, I think about this a lot, and I'm sure you do too as you think about character work and that type of thing. But before I get into what I was going to say, what are your thoughts on a character arc?
I think that it's like the whole focus of the story.
Yeah.
And I like that at the end, Kuzco apologizes, but the way he apologizes is still in character.
Oh, for sure.
Because he's not like, "I'm sorry, I was wrong." He's like, "Oh, you told me this whole thing, but it doesn't sing."
Yes. Wink, wink. Very coy. Like, kind of relating. Yeah, I feel like with improv, it's very difficult on stage. It's like a very good comedic trick.
This podcast is somewhat improv.
Yeah, it is. It is. We've got our points, but we're like doing a scene right now.
Yeah.
But like a lot of this movie is like a wink to the other person, but can be really hard to convey on stage and can be really difficult to keep going, because then the scene can kind of get stilted or kind of come to a standstill, because then it's like, all right, the story is this way, but we keep stopping the scene. So are you actually going to poison Kuzco or are you not? So we do see that first bit of that early on, like the winking back and forth between Yzma and Kronk, but then Kuzco's just so caught up in himself that that scene works perfectly.
I just want to, because we already discussed David Spade and John Goodman, I also want to say Patrick Warburton and Eartha Kitt are amazing in this.
Yeah, are. Eartha Kitt, have you seen Harriet the Spy?
A long time ago, yeah.
She's in it.
Yeah,
and she
I know.
Looks like Yzma
I know.
in that movie.
She does. They based her facial features on her, and they were really worried it was going to upset her, but she thought it was hilarious.
Oh, did she? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And she and Patrick Warburton are I think the only actors who have been in every single Emperor's New Groove related piece of media.
Oh, so John Goodman wasn't in anything further?
In Kronk's New Groove, the main cast comes back. In the TV show, for the first season, John Goodman isn't in it. David Spade doesn't come back at all.
Yeah.
I think he was busy with other stuff. But in the second season, John Goodman came back. Also, the actress who played Pacha's wife, Chicha, Wendy Malick, came back. She was in Just Shoot Me, which was also a show with David Spade in it.
Oh, yeah.
More recently, she was the BoJack Horseman's mom in BoJack Horseman, and Ida the Owl Lady in a new show called The Owl House that's out now on Disney Channel. And when that season's over, it'll also be on Disney Plus.
Yeah. Yeah, such great voice actors.
They did not pay me to say that. I wish they did.
You're open for it.
Yeah.
You can be sponsored by them. But yeah, they have such great voices, and going back to Disney rides, Patrick Warburton is actually
Soren.
Yeah, he's the They bring
I'm Patrick. I'll be your flight attendant today.
so good.
Yeah, thank you.
And he shapes the Soarin' ride. Like, I don't know, for those of you listening who have been to Disney World.
It's also in California.
Yeah,
they changed. It's opened in California first. They recently changed it so it's around the world, but the Patrick Warburton part is still there. And that's the most important part to me.
That is the most important. That's always when we go to that ride. My brothers are always like, "Oh, hey, it's Kronk.
Yeah.
He's telling us how to get ready for the ride. Maybe he'll tell it to us in Squirrel or something like that." But yeah, I always think of him for that ride too. It's so great.
Yeah, I also like this movie. This movie wants to just move the story forward, and there's a couple scenes where it like breaks for like a couple seconds, but for the most part, it wants to move the story forward to the point where it doesn't care if it doesn't stop to explain things. It will throw logic out the window just to get the story moving.
Right.
Like in the scene where Yzma and Kronk get there before them, and they don't know how.
Right, and then they do acknowledge that plot hole too, which is great. Adding further to its like self-awareness. Yeah, it's such a tight movie.
Yeah,
there's very little moments that actually are like subtle, like them traveling. As
we discussed before, it's very character driven.
Yeah,
everything that happens in this movie happens because of a decision that one of the characters makes, or a mistake that one of the characters makes.
Right, based on a decision they made, and it's.
But a lot of that is Kronk.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of it is Kronk driven or Kuzco driven.
Yeah.
But I also love like the side story when they go back to the Empire and show Yzma kind of take over.
Yeah.
I almost was curious about like what would that look like in like a sequel or a different.
There's an episode of the TV show where Kuzco wishes he was never emperor, and Yzma becomes empress.
Oh, that's such a great plot move.
It's basically the same, but instead of everything being about Kuzco, everything is about Yzma.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I feel like we just saw that, and they point that out in the movie too. Yeah, they're basically mirrors of each other.
Yeah, and that's why some people like to frame Yzma as like the hero of the story, and I don't understand it because I feel like her motivation for wanting to get rid of Kuzco makes sense, but actually wanting to murder him and the way she treats everyone else doesn't line up with that idea that she's a good person.
No, I don't think so.
And there's an entire joke about like she raised Kuzco, and Kronk's like, you think it would turn out better, and like a lot of people seem to miss that. That I think what they're trying to imply is that Kuzco's at least partially, Yzma's partially influenced Kuzco's behavior.
Right. Yeah, because she's his advisor.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a Jafar move. If he had been fired.
Yeah.
Like this is
like he should have been at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, he should have been. The Sultan should have fired him a long, long time ago. Then they wouldn't be in the mess they would have gotten in. But then Aladdin wouldn't have gotten to where he was.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
Oh yeah, no. I took plenty of notes during this.
Okay.
I was curious, what is like your favorite scene in this movie? You may have touched on this. Let's get into it.
That's hard. I mean, really, the whole movie is my favorite.
Scene.
But a scene that a lot of people refer back to when they're saying it's their favorite scene. So, and I agree with them that it's one of the best scenes and would be a good teaching tool for like comedic timing. Is the restaurant scene where they're in the restaurant and they're going back and forth, not seeing each other. Mm-hmm. I think that if I wanted to teach a class on like comedic timing, I would use that scene as a tool to teach people about it, because I think that timing in that scene is perfect.
For sure. That's like such an incredible animated scene.
Yeah.
That was one of my highlights too.
Animation is hard.
It is.
I mean
you know the most.
It's easier when, there's like hundreds of people working on it.
True. But having to like line that up and then plan that out.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible.
What was your favorite scene in the movie?
I would say that's like one of my favorites as well. Kind of expanding even more so is just like that whole diner sequence.
Yeah.
Of like them for their like first time ever really collaborating together, Pasha and Kuzco, to like, oh, we really tricked that waitress.
Yeah.
We did one over on her. Which is like, yeah, whatever. To that chef was also probably the best. Like him getting so frustrated with the excess ordering around and packing what he was cooking into a suitcase along with a bunch of other things because this is the last straw and he's out of this town. He's got artistic vision. He's going to take it to places. Was just so great that he passed that on to Kronk. It was one of my favorite things.
In the sequel, Kronk works at that restaurant. In the TV series, there's another restaurant. It's a chain apparently. And there's another restaurant that's closer to the school where he works at that restaurant. And I'm wondering if he works at both of them and if he just goes back and forth. So I feel like he's the man who could do that.
Knowing him, he can make the shifts happen.
Yeah.
He loves his work, and anytime he gets the opportunity to take something on, he's like so gracious for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, him leaving the diner with Yzma probably was a sad moment for him because he's like, oh man.
Yeah.
But it was like also such a great improv moment too because oftentimes we kind of set people up in like one-on-one classes or like first improv classes of like, all right, you two are like the best chefs in the world, or you're like the worst chefs in the world. What would that look like? And of course, we know Kronk loves cooking, so that just set him up for success. So you want to see him succeed, and like each time he gave out an order that was done, it was just you wanted to clap along with him and celebrate him. That was another thing I really loved about that, like that whole diner sequence and the birthday song.
Yeah,
it's actually, I don't think I've told you this before, but it is legendary in my family. Every single birthday that we sing, and we have the cake out, or sing happy birthday and have the candles. Part two is, and many more. Part 3 is the Emperor's New Groove song of like happy birthday from us to you.
I think that might have been used as like a real restaurant at one point.
I'm sure it was. Yeah, we use that every single
on Twitter. I always send a gif of that scene to people for their birthday.
That's a good callback to it then. That.
There's also some, Disney tropes in this that I feel like it kind of subverts. The one that sticks out the most to me is at the end where, in movies like Sleeping Beauty or Aladdin, the bad guy uses the magic to turn in, or also Little Mermaid, to turn into like a giant monster.
Yeah.
And instead she turns into a little cat.
Yes.
Which also is funny because she's Catwoman.
Yeah. The least menacing too. Yeah, what other tropes did it like?
I
like that.
I feel like the character that embodies the stereotypical Disney princess the most. A lot of people say Kuzco's their favorite Disney princess, but I don't really see that. Is Kronk. He loves to cook. Yeah. He loves to just do whatever people want him to do. He wants everyone to be happy, and he talks to animals.
Oh, that's true. He's the only one that talks to animals.
Yeah,
so like his best friend.
So, like, if any of these characters is going to be referred to as a Disney princess, it should really be Kronk.
That's fair.
Which is also funny because he's working for the bad guy.
That would be a really interesting Disney movie, princess movie even, just to see the main character having to be stuck in this situation and find their way out of it. Of, like, having to work for something evil.
Yeah.
Like having an evil dad or something.
Yeah.
Evil king dad and then having to escape from it. Which some of them kind of dealt in that zone, but not really like the agency piece of it that like Kronk sometimes really occupies in this role.
Yeah.
I was also curious for if you thought this movie came out like this year, would it have a different response?
I think if it came out this year, there are 2 different reactions I think it could have had. Yeah. One is it would be a lot more successful because modern Disney movies seem to have found a balance between doing more traditional Disney movies and doing more comedic Disney movies. So I feel like it would fit in with one of the more comedic ones. Yeah. The other thing is it's a movie set in Peru and everyone in it is white except for the kid. Yes. Which I think would probably turn some heads today.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, I was thinking that too. Because everyone's white voicing these Peruvians.
Yeah. Which is why I don't want them to remake it anyways. But anytime I see someone wanting to cast a white person in a remake, I'm like, no, if they had to remake this, I would want them to cast Peruvians. It's the only saving grace a remake of this movie could possibly have for me, would be an authentic cast. Because this movie does not seem like something that would translate well to live action. So it's very cartoony.
Yeah, especially with all of those huge physical sequences.
Yeah.
Like the mechanics of those just don't work within animations anyway, but they're like totally fine with going crazy town on those, but then grounding it with relationship building and connection to those characters.
Yeah, and then trying to do all those cartoony scenes but making it look like a real llama with CGI would look weird.
They will look so weird. The weirdest. People already were kind of concerned with Lion King, right? Yeah. So, and Dumbo.
Yeah. And Lion King has a lot of, like, from the clips I've seen, I haven't seen the movie. I guess I could watch it anytime I want. I mean, the remake, obviously.
You can. Yeah. It's on Disney Plus, right?
Yes, it is. There's, like, a scene where he swings on a vine and it looks so weird.
I know what you're talking about.
Because that happens in the animated one.
Yeah.
But it is animated, so it doesn't look weird.
Yeah.
And in this, it looks like a real lion swinging on a vine. It makes no sense. And
which lions do not do.
Yes, and when with cartoons, you can exaggerate expressions more, which is something that they really did not do on Lion King that they could have really done, because they've done it like the Narnia movies had Aslan, and he looked like he was emoting, even though he looked fairly realistic. But in the new ones, like I think Favreau was really pushing for the lions to not have emotion because it doesn't look real enough if they are something. Anyways, getting slightly off topic, we're talking about the Emperor's New Groove.
But thinking about that,
about what if they did do a remake. Also, if I had to pick a director for a remake, even though I really don't want one, I honestly prefer more sequels.
Oh, okay.
I don't know anyone else would prefer anything other than original movies.
Right.
But if I had to choose a director, the only two I would pick would be Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who did the Lego Movie. And because I feel like they have a very self-aware sense of humor that I think would translate really well. Like,
yeah, I would.
If there was a remake of this movie, it would have to have characters that knew that there was a cartoon before.
Yeah.
Such a definitive part of this franchise is the self-awareness, basically, and the fourth wall jokes.
If you said though you would prefer sequels over a remake.
I mean, more sequels because they technically already did a sequel.
Right. So what would those sequels do you think would look like if there had to be more? Or
I've outlined a whole trilogy of sequels. I'm not going to describe all of them because that would take a while, but
that's another podcast episode.
But it basically, to sum it up, it kind of takes elements from the original story that they were going to do and retrofits them to be more silly and fit within this universe.
Oh, okay.
So and also each movie would focus on a different character.
Oh, I like that.
Because the first one focuses on Kuzco and Kronk, the group focuses on Kronk, so the next three would focus on different characters from the franchise.
Yeah.
So they would all be, Pacha, etc.'s new groove. And then the last one would be Yzma's old groove.
Ooh.
Which I read somewhere that they were planning to do that before Eartha Kitt died, but I don't know how accurate that is or if that was just something someone made up. But I liked the idea that instead of Yzma's new groove, it was Yzma's old groove.
Yeah, what was Yzma like before? That would be like a prequel, wouldn't it?
It could be a prequel. I think my idea was that it was going to... I don't know. It was like each was going to be like in a slightly different genre, but all of them were going to be comedies.
Okay.
So like,
for sure.
Yzma's was going to be like black comedy. Mm-hmm. Which I feel like that's another thing. I feel like the Emperor's New Groove kind of already is...
It's really dark.
It has really dark humor.
Yeah.
Because the entire premise revolves around an attempted assassination attempt.
Right.
And nobody cares that he's dead. Or they think he's dead and nobody cares.
Right.
Because he was such a lousy emperor.
And like the whole notion of a narcissistic emperor too that is totally okay with pushing away his like others' interests and just totally self-interested.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also very scarily relevant.
It is, for sure. It feels capitalistic in a way, too.
Yeah, and there's one note I had was that, so you remember the scene where they first introduced Yzma, the first scene that demonstrates that she's also not a good person?
Yeah.
Where she's like, you should have thought of that before you became peasants?
Yes.
Well, in my notes I put Yzma would make a good Republican.
Topical.
Yes.
Yeah, she would fit, I think.
So... what else? I'm really curious about what notes you could put down. I really like to hear other people talk about this movie.
Sure.
I guess it's a Dunning-Kruger effect thing, where I just want more people to tell me things I already know that I like to hear.
Happy to, because I took a lot of notes because, like I said, I've only seen, like, the last 40 minutes, like, for the past 10-ish years. Like, it's been a really long time since I've seen all of it. My brothers love catching this movie now, so, like, that's why I only see the last bit of it. For whatever reason. But we've gotten into, I think this movie, we've gotten into like the celebrity tell-all aspect that I feel like this really encompasses. Like, it feels like Cusco's memoir of
Yeah.
this day. And the multi-dimensional characters, like, I feel like everyone is so well
Yes.
developed. From
And
his
contributes
family,
to the plot.
contributes to the plot, especially even like his wife and
Yeah.
Isma are very strong female characters.
Yeah.
David Spade's voice is everything. That's
Yeah.
a note I wrote.
Yeah.
I don't think Cusco could. Would you say any other actor could really encompass him? Like,
I mean,
would you give any other?
Every voice actor, I feel like when they bring a new voice actor to voice that character, they do their own version of that character.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard from professionals, like Rob Paulson did The Mask, and they said, well, be more like Jim Carrey. And he said, if you wanted Jim Carrey, you should have gotten Jim Carrey.
Right.
So in the TV show, he's played by J.P. Minogue, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've heard of him or not. He's been in some things.
Yeah.
He was the dean's doppelganger in Community.
Oh.
So the dean in Community is Jim Rash.
Yeah.
J.P. Minogue played a character that looks like him in Community.
Oh my gosh. I forgot about that.
And I think he played Moby in How I Met Your Mother.
Okay. Wow, he's done some big parts.
Yeah, and he was also in a lot of Disney stuff.
Oh yeah.
Which I think comes with being in one. If you're in one Disney thing, they're going to make you do a whole bunch of other things.
Once you got your foot in the door, then it's really easy to keep you on contract.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you think he does like a distinct version?
He doesn't sound like David Spade,
No.
but the character's very much the same. And I feel like some people even like don't like it because he's still kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
But I feel he doesn't. There's no scenes that I recall on the TV show where he explicitly has someone physically thrown out a window. So I still think that makes him better.
Not as jerky.
Yeah, and he's willing to communicate with peasants, which I don't think the Cusco before the llama thing would have happened.
So is he showing Cusco after everything had happened?
Yes, a lot of people think it's a prequel, but it's not. And the main identifying that it's not a prequel is Chicha has her third baby, and throughout this entire movie until the end, she's pregnant.
Right.
And with the first pregnant woman on screen in a Disney animated movie as well.
Oh wow.
But also, he's a teenager, and I feel like teenagers sometimes relapse into screwy behavior.
Yeah, there's the whole prefrontal cortex development thing. He's still a young adult.
Yeah.
Developing, trying to figure out. Because, like, this one instance, sure, it's life-changing, but he's got still a whole 18 years in the past of, like, this type of behavior and habits that he has to still work through.
Yeah. And he was spoiled since a child, evidently, because they show that.
Yeah.
And the first thing that popped in my head now, whenever I see a baby in anything Disney-related, is Baby Yoda. So that was where my brain went this time I watched it.
Oh, okay.
It's like, how would people rate Baby Cusco compared to Baby Yoda?
Oh, we all know Baby Yoda would always win.
Yes, but Cusco wouldn't want that.
Oh, of course not.
But yes.
Baby Cusco would have pushed him over.
Yeah.
Out of another window, his first
defenestration, yes. That I don't know why I didn't think to bring that up. I love that word.
Me too. It's one of my favorites.
Like, I think everyone loves that word because I see people on the internet just using it for no reason all the time. Like, they could just say, this guy was thrown out a window, but instead they say defenestration. Yeah, I keep saying, I'm going to have to edit all that out, except this one time, so people know.
So you know that one time you were saying it.
Yes. That I'm human.
Yes, absolutely. Do you want me to go through more of my notes?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just reading through what I've got. I think it's so interesting. The language that they chose to use was not very specific to this time period, but I feel like it was popularized because of this movie. Like, he's, like, disturbing the Emperor's groove, and, like, boom, baby, boom, and, like, all of those
and Booyah,
things.
which I think was around, like, a little bit in the late 90s. But
a little bit, but I feel like
the combination of this, Ron Stoppable from Kim Possible and Cyborg from Teen Titans.
Yeah, okay.
I think the three of those characters, I think, really made Booyah a popular thing to say.
It was the coolest thing. Like, no one says those anymore. like at all unless you're direct referencing this movie. I think this movie stands out for like those.
Whenever I ride Splash Mountain and I scream booyah when we go down the drop.
It's required.
So if you're ever in Magic Kingdom and you hear someone saying booyah going down Splash Mountain, it might be me.
It may be you because you're down there all the time.
Yeah. Well, less than I used to be, but I'm hoping to maybe go soon.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Our last visit was last May, but we're pushing into
They
2021.
I'm going to do a whole separate episode eventually about what there is and isn't Emperor's New Groove wise in the theme parks, but I will touch a little bit that there's like a card game thing where you fight villains in the Magic Kingdom, and one of the villains is Yzma.
Oh, okay.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
It takes up some of the time you have in the day to do it, but it's one of the few representations of the movie that's in the parks.
Yeah, because they don't have anyone dressed up as them, right?
No, they recently started having them in Paris. I think maybe the reason behind that is because one of the studios, it was animated by Disney, but there's a Disney studio in California and Disney studio in Florida and Disney studio in Paris, and this was shared between the California studio and the Paris studio, which to me makes it weird they have some representation in the Florida park but none in the California park, except maybe if they, and I didn't get to visit the animation thing in the California Adventure, so they might have had some references to it in that, but other than that, I've seen more references to it in Disney World than Disneyland, because I went to Disneyland.
I've never been.
It's small.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's different.
Yeah.
It's different enough to go
yeah.
check it out.
There's some, like, a part of it, I like that they can fit a lot of stuff into that tiny space, and that's one of the things that I love them both so much, because they have their own unique rides and attractions that the other ones don't have. The Pirates in Disneyland is better, though, than the one in Disney World.
Oh, really? Yeah, because the Pirates in Disney World, we always forget.
Yep.
So we try it, and we're like, oh, wait, okay, that was kind of boring.
It was thrown together, like, at the last minute.
That makes so much sense, but it's such, like, a great reprieve of air conditioning.
Yeah.
We absolutely need it. So this is kind of just, like, a random side note question, because my parents have been trying to figure out, do we actually want to go to Disneyland? So if we do, is it like a one-day thing, or do you think it's a multiple-day thing?
It depends how much you want to get done, I would think.
We would try to get everything done.
If you want to go there's two parks. There's Disneyland and Disney California Adventure. So if you want to do those both, I would take maybe 2 or 3 days.
Total or each?
Total.
Okay.
Because I did most of the things in Disneyland, not as much at Disney California Adventure, but I was in a hurry. So that if I wasn't in as much of a hurry, I probably would have gotten more stuff done.
Okay. Good to know. Now everyone knows I'm trying to plot and get us to California. Because that's been like a major question. We've done Disney World so many times now. And it's great that they are updating it.
Yeah,
there was a period of time like
where they were
not, and we kept going back, and I'm like, we've been doing this for so many years and nothing's changed.
Yeah.
And now I'm like eating
words. I think Universal paralyzed them for a bit.
Oh.
When they opened Harry Potter, they were trying to figure out how to compete with it,
right.
And it took them years. So they made Avatar Land first. That did okay, but it wasn't enough. So now they're doing Star Wars Land.
Yes.
I mean, it's open now.
It's open now. Yeah.
But there were a good 4 or 5 years where they weren't doing anything.
Yeah, and that's
they updated Fantasyland a little bit, but not enough.
Yeah.
And then Avatar, I don't feel like has the same pull as Harry Potter does. I feel like Star Wars makes much more sense.
Oh, it does. I have the biggest beef about Avatar Land.
I've been there, and I went there this past year, and it's fun. I don't think that a movie's one of Disney World's most popular rides is based on a movie no one can see anymore.
Exactly.
So I don't necessarily think that just because something isn't popular or even a good movie doesn't mean it won't necessarily make a good ride. So Avatar, the park and the ride is fun, but I found the idea behind it very strange.
I agree. I have a very controversial viewpoint where I don't think it's worth it at all to make a land for a movie that they haven't released any sequels in.
Yeah.
Years.
Yeah.
I will probably get some flack on that because I always do. But on that point,
well, people have opinions.
I have hefty opinions on that. But no one said anything when we were there. Everyone was loving it. And I was like, what is the point? There's like a 6-hour wait for this one ride.
Well, that's half luckily and half unlucky, because the unlucky part is I'm technically disabled. So lines make me extremely nervous and make me have panic attacks.
Yeah.
So I get a disability thing, so I was able to basically go through the Fast Pass line.
Oh, yeah, we used the Fast Pass line because, the same for my brother.
Because the line was incredibly long.
Yeah.
There. And it's been that way since it opened. Like, I think the same, 2 to 4 hours long.
Yes.
For the Flight of Passage ride. I went on it. It was fun. But I feel like in terms of, from a marketing standpoint, it seems like an odd choice to base an entire land on Avatar.
So true, and just for that ride and one other kind of...
Yeah, and the boat ride. And I think they wanted to have a third ride, but they ran out of money or something.
Oh, okay.
They also wanted to have a third ride for the Star Wars land, and they ran out of money for it.
Oh, so there's only 2 rides in Star Wars land?
At the moment, but they're probably going to expand it in the future, I would think.
I would think so.
After they get the Tron coaster and the Ratatouille ride and...
Ratatouille ride? Oh, man. I can't wait for that. That's the one I'm excited about.
The Guardians of the Galaxy roller coaster that's replacing the ride that's the opposite of a roller coaster where you just sit there. The Universe of Energy.
Oh, yeah. Aww.
I like that ride, okay, but also, I'm not going to be terribly sad about it.
I'm not going to be sad about that. I'll just be like, oh, memories.
Probably the ride I'm most sad about them replacing, and even that one I am super excited about maybe getting to ride. The ride that replaces it soon is the Great Movie Ride.
Oh, they're going to replace it?
It already closed.
Oh.
It's going to be replaced with the world's first ever Mickey Mouse ride.
Oh, okay.
Which they have never done a ride dedicated to Mickey Mouse before. He's had shows,
right,
but never a full-blown ride. So that's going to be interesting. And it's going to look like you're in a cartoon.
Interesting. Okay.
With they invented whole new technology and stuff for it.
Yeah, I was bummed about the Great Movie Ride.
Yeah, it was one of my favorites. But for that one, I mean, for everything they're closing, like at Epcot, they have sponsors or they have licenses to certain movies that they don't want to keep renewing. So it's easier to just replace it with something they already own. I think that's the main reason they're doing it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because the Epcot and Tomorrowland were when Disneyland opened, Tomorrowland. Do you want to talk more about the Immersion of Groove?
Yeah,
we can talk about this another time.
We can talk about this another time. We gotta start another podcast where we talk about Disney World and Disneyland. Sorry, that was all stemmed from a question I had about
it's okay.
going to Disneyland. But it's related because of rides and things like that.
And there's a ride in this movie.
Yeah, there's a ride in this
so
movie.
Clearly they wanted there to be a ride.
Yes, they
when
did.
They made this movie.
Evidently. So clear.
I mean, half of it they wanted to be a ride, half of it they were just making fun of themselves. But
it's true. Yeah, I mean that callback to that ride itself too.
Yeah.
The levers.
Yeah, that's
great.
That becomes like a regular thing in the TV show.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
See, what are some other things I had on this? Well, of course, I have to point this out as a big Richie Rich fan. Was like the Cusco head, like Mount Rushmore head. Do you remember Richie Rich? Have you seen that movie with Macaulay Culkin?
I haven't seen it or the cartoon, but I have heard of it. I'm not surprised that he has a giant mountain that looks like a head.
Of course, yeah.
It's sort of that is based on not an actual building, but an actual statue that the Incas had on their sacrificial knives called a tumi, I believe.
Oh, okay, interesting.
It's a knife that looks kind of like a spoon.
Mm.
It has a rounded blade that they use to cut off llamas.
No, really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this movie goes in deep. That's a deep cut.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing they didn't show that in the movie.
No. Oh man, especially. Well, that would have been lined up with how dark it is. To become a llama and worry about.
Yeah. That's one of the things that one of the sequels would be about.
Oh, yeah.
Would be Cusco becoming a llama again and Eva wanting to sacrifice him.
Again, she finds a way to become, or she still retains the cat image.
Unfortunately, no. I think they should have kept her a cat the entire franchise because I think that would have been a million times more funny.
Oh, for sure.
But in the second one, she has a cat tail, but it's starting to wear off. And in the TV show, she's human again. There's a few times where she has a plan that requires her to take a potion that turns her back into a cat, but she's never permanently a cat.
Oh, interesting.
I think maybe they thought people who didn't see the movie would be confused as to why she was a cat.
What is this cat?
I feel like that's the reason Disney does most of the things that and the continuity stuff in their sequels is because they're worried people won't have seen the first one.
So true. Same, but which is weird is like my favorite of those is Beauty and the Beast when they turn the Beast back.
Yeah.
Because like no one wants to know what Adam looks like on a day-to-day basis. Like who cares about Adam?
Nobody go to the park to meet Adam because he's the Beast in the park.
It's so true.
And that's interesting. When this first came out, they did have meet and greets for the characters, and Cusco was only a llama. But recently, when they started bringing them back to Paris, they had two Cuscos. They had one as a llama and one as a human, which is the first time they've acknowledged that a character's not always in that one form in the parks that I know of. So that was really interesting. And he's short. I wanted to know how tall the characters were, and my best way of finding that out was to look up how tall the actors who play them in the parks are required to be. And Cusco's like 5'4" or something.
He's really short.
Yeah. And also, I was also looked up the voice actors, but I determined the voice actors are not the same height as the characters because Wendy Malick is 5'10", and John Goodman is shorter than her, and John Goodman's character is much taller than her in the movie.
Yeah. Oh wait, so John Goodman, I thought he was like 6 something.
I don't think he's short.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But not as short as David Spade.
Okay.
Well, David Spade seems like a guy that'd be short.
Yeah. Seeing him on SNL and things like that, I feel like Cusco is like a great animated version of him if he were Caribbean.
Yeah. I think this is the best thing David Spade's ever been in.
I feel like even since then, there's nothing that could be as monumental as this.
Yeah.
Maybe Joe Dirt for other reasons.
I don't really like it that much.
I didn't love Joe Dirt.
But this is the movie that like lots of people who cannot stand David Spade say he's alright in. So.
He's very polarizing, and less so in this role. Yeah, my mom, like every time she sees this movie, she's always like, "Oh, David Spade."
Because you're not supposed to like him at first.
No, and maybe most of it too. Like he's supposed to be maybe the teeniest bit sympathetic.
Yeah, you're supposed to just want to follow the story of how
Pacha gets his.
Yeah, how Pacha gets. He's the main character because he goes through more changes than Pacha does.
Yeah.
But in terms of hero, if you're gonna identify with a single character as the hero of the story, it should be Pacha because he's the most sympathetic character. The order of the 4 main, because there's a whole bunch of characters in this movie.
You're right.
From morality goes Pacha is like at the top of the morality, then Kronk, then Yzma, then Cusco. Then Cusco, then Yzma. I mixed up Cusco because Yzma comes after Cusco because Cusco has more moral. Cusco has more empathy than Yzma does.
Teensy bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And grows over her.
Yeah, because Yzma will not save Pacha.
Oh, there's no way. And she, the first chance she gets whenever she's deceived by Kronk, she gets rid of him. Bye, Felicia.
Yes, and I think something I noticed that I don't think a lot of people notice is even though Cusco's very condescending towards Kronk, compared to how he treats Pacha and Yzma, Kronk's probably the character he's the nicest to.
Yeah.
And Yzma abuses Kronk, and I feel like that's the thing for me that makes the difference between Cusco and Yzma is how they treat Kronk. Everybody should be nice to Kronk.
It's so true. You should be. Oh, that's so interesting too, though. That I just went back to the diner scene in my head. He definitely sees Kronk right when he goes in the kitchen, but his eyes they make it look like his eyes are closed the whole time.
Yeah.
His eyelashes.
But in the diner scene, he's trying to be affable. But he's a lot better at it with Kronk than he is with Yzma.
Yes. Yeah. Also, is that the first Disney character to do drag?
No, Timon did.
Oh, yeah,
I know that. And he dressed in drag and did the hula. I don't remember if there's any before that, but there's so many Disney shorts. There was probably one. The Looney Tunes were certainly doing that. And I wouldn't be surprised if Disney at one point did that. Right. Minnie basically is Mickey Mouse in drag anyway.
And Donald and Daisy.
Yeah.
Else I got here. Yeah, everything was just so tight about this movie. There are so many quotable lines.
Yes, I wish I knew how to write that good.
You can.
I'm sure after maybe 20 years of writing, maybe I'll be able to write something.
Rewrite it like that. But is this your writing style? Would this be if you wrote something like this?
I have this is one of my biggest influences for sure.
Yeah.
But I also have something where a lot of the times characters will just say or
Yeah,
characters will pop. I guess a lot of this is in the Emperor's New Groove, but a lot of this also just comes from me. I kind of write my scripts as if they're being improv.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, characters will, like, stutter over themselves, and, like, characters will say, I can't think of a good example, like, oh no, that's not right. Well, that is right, but that's not what I'm talking about. Stuff like that.
Right.
Where, like, they'll backtrack and stuff. And I feel like...
That's so realistic, though.
And I feel like...
It's a realism.
Yeah, that sort of became my style. And I feel like, to some people, it might be annoying. But I feel like it also is kind of... I don't see it a whole lot. Like, the best examples I can think of is stuff like Rick and Morty, where a lot of the stuff is, like, ad-libbed and stuff. Yeah, but, I have a show... I'm an animator. I was going to mention this later at the end when we did plugs.
Mention it now.
I'm an animator. One of my channel on YouTube is Fireblast Studios. One of my flagship show, or whatever you would call it, is the Molly and Pippin show. And the character of Molly... It's called the Molly and Pippin, so they're both based on my dogs. One of them is still around, Pippin. Molly is unfortunately no longer with us, but she's based on Molly very much, but also some of her mannerisms and characters based on Cusco. She is a narcissist. She never throws anybody out a window, but she regularly is taking advantage of, like, Pippin's kindness. Pippin is, like, sort of like the Pacha, but really not, because I don't want every character in this to be an Emperor's New Groove character.
Right.
So if I had to compare Pippin, he'd be more like Mabel from Gravity Falls.
Okay.
And Pippin's, his mind is, which I guess Kronk is kind of like that too. Like, Kronk's not exactly stupid. He's just, his mind is in another place.
Yeah.
Which is another thing I like that they explore further in the show, is that he's not really stupid. He's just, his mind wanders.
He's got a big imagination.
Yeah, big imagination. And he has his priorities sorted out.
Oh, for sure. He knows those priorities. That's why I love with him too, because, like, he is so clear with those two.
Yeah.
The only issue where it becomes a problem is, like, whenever he has to do a really terrible questionable moral thing.
Yeah, and those characters are always there.
Yeah.
They come back in the TV show. Eventually they give everyone them, and I feel like that kind of defeats the joke, but I like every episode of the show, and I'm going to be reviewing every episode of the show on this podcast, so stay tuned.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's a whole joke. Well, Yzma doesn't have them. So in the TV show, they give every character a shoulder angel and devil except Yzma, which I guess is sort of consistent with the movie, because Yzma doesn't know what he's doing.
Right. No.
But Cusco and Pacha don't either, and Cusco at least has a shoulder angel and devil in the TV show.
Oh, he does.
Yeah. And sometimes they'll switch it up, and the devil character will tell them to do the good thing, and the angel character will tell them to do the bad thing.
Oh, okay.
Just for fun.
Yeah.
So the it's a very formulaic show where a lot of the jokes are reruns of the same jokes, but they try to change them.
Yeah.
I like to think of it, if I could compare it to one show, I'd compare it to, aside from, it's distinctly The Emperor's New Groove. But as far as what they do with the gags as the show progresses, Phineas and Ferb, where they rely very heavily, especially in the first, like, season, on repeating the same jokes over and over again. But as the show progresses, they start changing them up, and eventually they start focusing less on them. They never go away completely, because I feel like those jokes aren't part of the identity of the franchise.
Right.
But they're able to focus on new jokes as well, like after the 12th episode, or by the 12th episode or so. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good point towards, like, character game, because there's, like, those jokes relate to that character's
Yes,
game.
that's one of the things when people criticize the sequel because they bring back certain jokes like Kronk, Shoulder, Angel, and Devil. Kronk, Shoulder, Angel, and Devil is more than just a joke. That is a fundamental part of his character.
Absolutely.
That's his identity.
Yeah. And
So it annoys me when people mistake... I mean, it is a joke, but also it's a character trait.
It is. It doesn't fall out of the realm of possibility for Kronk. Like, that doesn't seem...
Yes, it seems like
very true to him.
And like a distinguishing trait, a defining trait of him is he has that Shoulder, Angel, and Devil. They come back anytime. Pretty much any piece of media that has Kronk in it at some point are going to be in it.
Yeah.
Because they are fundamentally part of his character.
Yeah. So I would say then, to continue your point, is like they're overgeneralizing the joke by making it to Cusco and Pacha too, because...
I don't think they ever do it to Pacha.
Oh, okay.
But if they did, I feel like his angel would win most of the time.
Oh, right. Yeah. You wouldn't have a devil.
What I love about Kronk is neither of them really win because when they're trying to, they get distracted and eventually Kronk just makes up his mind on his own.
Yes.
Which I think is part of the joke.
Yeah.
And another
his own ego though too.
Yeah, and another part of the joke is there's a lot of scenes like in the dining scene where not the diner scene, the dinner scene where he is preparing a meal for Cusco.
Yeah.
Where Yzma keeps saying things that are where she's obviously talking about killing Cusco, but Kronk thinks she's talking about his cooking.
Food, yes.
That's a lot of people seem to miss that too when I watch it with people, or they just don't. Maybe they don't laugh at it because sometimes you can find a thing funny and not laugh at it. It gets after a while laughing becomes painful.
Especially if you're like so used to that joke, it's so ingrained in you. But yeah, I love that too. That's like also such a great improv based scene or like comedy scene of like there's obviously that.
Speaking of
layers.
Improv, you know the theme when Kronk is taking Cusco to get rid of the body and he does his own theme music?
Yeah.
Patrick Warburton improvised that music,
yes.
and Disney made him sign over the rights to his improvised music.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
I think he does it in the TV show sometimes too, so I guess they got good leverage out of it.
Yeah. That's so Kronk though.
Yes.
I love that.
And somehow, another thing I love is that somehow Cusco knew, since the whole movie relies on Cusco narrating it until, the middle part. So there's a whole bunch of things that there's no way Cusco should be able to know what was happening that you see. And I think that's funny. He even admits that he was unconscious during part of it.
Yes.
So like how he knows all this happened, except, I guess he's watching the movie.
He's watching it with us.
Because
he comes out.
Yeah, and he does that in the TV show too.
Oh, okay.
So that's another thing that people probably think, oh, that's another gag they just repeat it over and over again. That I feel like that is a definitive part of his character for me, along with kind of being an asshole.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is probably why he's still an asshole in the TV shows, because he'd be kind of boring if he wasn't.
So true. I think like this movie, the writers, everyone was on board with the fact that like they know the rules of storytelling, but they broke so many of them.
Yes, that's what I want to do when I make a movie, which will happen eventually.
Yeah. Would you make an animation?
Yes, I would make an animation. I'm thinking about maybe freelancing it.
Okay.
Or I would do some of it. I do most of the storyboarding and the writing, but I would freelance it so that I'm not doing the entire movie, because that would take 4 years at least.
It would take so long.
Yeah.
So it would be a feature. Short.
Yeah. I'm gonna make I'm gonna make the Molly Pippin show into a movie eventually. I'm announcing it now, though. I've announced it before on Twitter, but I don't think anyone was paying attention. So.
Now they are.
I hope so. Well, since this has to do with something that definitely has an audience, I would hope that people are listening to this. Yeah. I do have a project coming out, hopefully later this year, called A Christmas Choral, which is going to be a 10-minute short, but it's going to be the longest thing I've ever done.
Okay.
And that I am doing the animation by myself, but I'm getting voice acted. Would you like to?
Sure.
Okay.
On the end today.
Cool.
Let's see. Do we want to jump into plugs now?
If
are there any other things?
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
We got into. I had like 3 pages. So for those people who cannot see this right now, I had 3 pages of notes.
I think I had 3 pages, but it's on my iPad, so I can't exactly tell.
But we went through all of it. Yeah. Lots of great things about this movie.
This is a great movie. In the next episode, after I find a guest who is willing to do it, I'll be covering the sequel the very divisive sequel, Kronk's New Groove. It's like almost all most of the Disney sequels, everyone hates them. Well, not everyone. There's an audience for everything, but most people hate them. Yeah. Then there's like the Lion King 1.5 or Lion King 2, Lion King 1.5, where you don't view it as a sequel. It's more of a parody of a sequel, in my opinion. With the Lion King 2, people and the Lilo and Stitch, people consider good sequels. Kronk's New Groove is the one where it's like right split down the middle. Some people hate it and some people like it.
Oh, it's interesting. I had no idea.
It's a movie that's all about Kronk, hence the name.
Right.
And
was it directed?
Oh yeah, all of the sequels at this time that Disney was doing, except for the Pixar stuff, was direct to video. Okay. It was an Eisner thing, I'm pretty sure. That John Lasseter shut down all the direct-to-video sequels, said, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to focus instead on doing a sequel to Cars. Nobody wants a sequel to The Emperor's New Groove, any more sequels to The Emperor's New Groove. Nobody wants any more sequels to any of those. People want Cars.
Yeah, they do.
It's just, this is an objectively good movie. If you do not like this movie, you are a bad person.
You said it today.
Yeah. No, I'm joking, but most of the people who I know I don't know anyone as obsessed with this movie as I am, clearly. But most people either really, really like it or like it enough.
Yeah.
Like, so, it certainly has a following, and there's just Disney's just now starting to realize it has a following. There's some Funko Pops over there.
Yeah, sell those.
They've started selling T-shirts, and eventually they're probably going to do a live action remake. Unfortunately, they already announced one for Lilo and Stitch. It's only a matter of time. I'd rather get like a Disney Plus. I think that what they did with straight to video sequels, they should do them better. Like do them in house instead of outsourcing, because the studio they outsource to is gone anyways. Walt Disney Animation Pictures should make sequels to their movies that go straight to Disney Plus if they don't want to put them in theaters.
Yeah.
I feel like Disney Plus is going to be the future of everything they don't want to put in theaters. It's going to go on Disney Plus. So before this thing dies on us, do you have anything you would like to plug? Social media or just any projects or anything?
Yeah, so you mentioned I'm an improviser in the area, so I guess that's the big thing.
Yes, in North Carolina. The Triangle specifically.
The Triangle. Do a lot of shows at the Pitt Chapel Hill Theater, or Comedy Works, or Meddlesome. I also run a nonprofit if you guys want to follow that. But my Instagram is Tara Regan, if you want to come by and say hello. I just recently got an Instagram, and reeling it back, I went to the NC Comic Con in October as Cusco. Oh.
And my sister put a picture of me on Instagram. So maybe you can find that. Yeah. That's your homework, people. It doesn't really matter, but if you want to, you can. I'm Micah Hirsh, at Micah Hirsh on Twitter, Micah Hirsh on Facebook. Pretty much everywhere it's Micah Hirsh, except I have 2 YouTube channels. Fireblast Studios, which is where I do my animation. I also am going to upload some of these podcasts, but not all of them, because some of them are just going to be listening to, so that there'll be multiple platforms. The Emperor's New Podcast YouTube channel and the Emperor's New podcast as well is what you're listening to right now.
Check it out on Instagram or YouTube.
Or I think Anchor is where the main place I'm putting it on.
Oh, that's a good spot. I have my podcast there too.
So I think that will just about do it, and hopefully, at least before the next year's over, hopefully well before then, I'll be able to find another guest to watch and then review Kronk's New Groove. I'm very curious to see what whoever I end up doing its opinion on it is.
Yeah, me too. It should be fun. Thanks for having me on here, Mike.
So, thank you for being here, and thank you for listening.